It has been 40 years since the Vietnam War ended. As we move and continue to acknowledge Veterans Day, WGN's Courtney Gousman is here with us to tell all about two soldiers still dealing with issues after the Vietnam War.
Yes, they have remarkable stories, Micah, and I was mesmerized by listening to these stories. A lot of them I had no clue about. More than 58,000 Americans died from serving in Vietnam, and many of those fortunate enough to make it home can't forget their time there. Now, I talked to two soldiers who tell me for years they fought a battle they didn't even realize existed.
Christmas in a hospital. How strange it seemed to be. It's not a physical ailment, but an illness called PTSD.
46 years later, Doug Alexander still carries the burden of war. Alexander is a Vietnam veteran who wrote this poem while receiving treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. He is also my uncle.
I know those people died over there fighting a war that really none of us understood why we were there, but we would sit there to do a job and we were trying to do it. And I know that those people tried just as hard as the next guy, but they didn't make it. And that bothers me.
The year was 1969, and the country had already invested 15 years into Vietnam. My uncle was 19 and more than a year into his Army enlistment when he was given orders to head to Vietnam. He would soon be on the ground in Tay Ninh.
And I asked him, I said, well, why do they call it Rocket City? He said, because they get rocketed 3 times a day, every day.
He remembers battles in the middle of the night against a communist group backing the North Vietnamese, commonly referred to by the U.S. as Viet Cong soldiers. The group repeatedly overran my uncle's military base.
The next day, we had to do what they call policing. And what is policing? You're going out now, instead of policing for trash and cleaning up trash, we were cleaning up basically body parts.
This is my Purple Heart, which I received in Vietnam for being wounded in action.
Also from Chicago's West Side, my uncle's childhood friend, Paul Eugene Short. Short was drafted at 19 and sent overseas. He spent most of his days on the front lines of combat in Vietnam's jungles.
The smells, the hollering, the screaming, oh, you'd be smelling blood, dirt, all kind of stuff.
But it was friendly fire that ended Paul's tour in Vietnam.
Where were you hit? What was the result of that?
Everywhere. Shrapnel, stuff like that. All up in here, all across here.
He now deals with countless health issues.
Diabetes, hepatitis, I have cirrhosis of the liver.
Much of which he says was brought on by repeated exposure to the toxic Agent Orange, sprayed over the jungle to destroy tree cover and reveal enemies.
We just thought it was just a quick rain flash. That stuff wasn't even in the picture. All you was trying to do is survive and live. That other stuff was small.
But it was the invisible wounds that affected these vets the most, haunted by nightmares and flashbacks from war.
It took me almost a year to sleep with both of my eyes closed when I got back.
And we're walking down the street during the 4th of July, and someone fired firecrackers, and I dived in the bushes. And everybody said, man, what you do that for? I said, it scared me.
They struggled to keep jobs and meaningful relationships. Frustration and anger consumed them, and both looked for ways to escape the painful memories.
We're talking about crack cocaine. That's what we're talking about. And it had a hold of me. When I was getting high, I didn't think about none of it.
It's kind of rough. I didn't really realize that I had PTSD.
Dr. Mark Pollack is the head of psychiatry at Rush University Medical Center and the hospital's Road Home program, which helps veterans navigate the mental stresses brought on by war.
The impact of serving in combat can be devastating to the individual.
Despite Vietnam ending in 1975, Dr. Pollack says the PTSD diagnosis wasn't recognized in the medical community until the late 70s, early 80s.
Giving it a name, I think, helped validate the experience that many of the returning soldiers had, that in fact they weren't crazy, they weren't making it up.
As PTSD was recognized, treatments were developed. For both my uncle and Paul, real help didn't arrive until the 90s.
I'm a fanatic when it comes to this.
It's music that helps Paul drown out the silence that triggers gruesome reminders. He also relies on weekly group sessions with other Vietnam veterans and regular meetings with his psychiatrist.
You say so.
For my uncle, his wife of 33 years, Carolyn, has helped him overcome the hurdles. He also completed a 2.5-month treatment program at a VA facility, which taught him how to deal with his emotions. That's also where he wrote this poem, a reminder of the struggle he and other veterans endure each and every day.
The way we saw death, it was just not fair. Because even when just walking, you smell death in the air. So if you don't understand, I have tried to explain. I went to Vietnam one way, did not come back the same.
Wow, that's just heart-wrenching. And to know that they went for so long without treatment or help, feeling lost.
It was amazing because, you know, like I said, they just didn't realize that there was something going on. It was a result of the war. My uncle was talking about walking down the street, hearing fireworks. He jumped into the bushes. He flashed back to the war. So there were just so many things that they finally connected, but it took them years, almost decades, before they realized this was a remnant of the war. So it was just amazing. But, you know, when I talked to Dr. Pollock, he told me that people who have served time in combat have markedly high rates of suicide, divorce rates. It just affects every facet of their life. Drug addiction, you heard my uncle mention that.
Cocaine,
so he was very frank, and so was his friend Paul, and I appreciated them sharing their story. And we've been running this all week on WGN, and it's just been amazing because the outpouring, so many people have been expressing love and prayers for my uncle and his friend, and he's been hearing from all these other Vietnam vets that have served in Vietnam, and it's been really uplifting for him.
And healing, I think, probably
It
to a certain
has.
extent.
It really has.
Thank you to Courtney. We appreciate you sharing that touching story.